We are worthy of living our wildest dreams. We are worthy of sharing our gifts. The world desires for you to share your gifts because you have gifts. You have something to share. You have something to say. And there's a lot of people online who don't think before they say something. They haven't taken the time to heal and to work through things before they start sharing. And you can tell because they're not embodied. Because they're not embodied. And an embodied person hits different. You can tell they have done their work. You can tell that they live in deep integrity and alignment with what they think and what they say and what they do. And it doesn't mean they get it perfectly all the time. We don't put them on a pedestal either. We just say, wow, look at what this person is showing me is possible. I want that. Welcome to the Reluctant Priestess podcast. I'm your host, Hannah Goldberg, and this is your space to explore the weird, woo-woo, and sublime world of spirit in a grounded and playful way. Each week, we'll learn how to navigate both the beauty and the bullshit of the spiritual world to see how and if all the fabulous topics in the name of wellness that you've been curious to know more about can actually help you uncover what it means to live a more deeply connected, inspiring, and fulfilling life. If navigating the world of the unseen has felt overwhelming, fake, or too out there for you to explore on your own before, you're exactly where you need to be. The cosmic abyss awaits, my love. Let's see what magic lies in store for us today. Hi, loves. Welcome back. I'm so glad that you're here. I don't know about you, but I feel like I live lifetimes, like lifetimes within a single day sometimes. And living in Bali, where it's such an energy vortex, things like manifestations, everything happens so much more quickly because the energy here is really clear, it's really clean. If you don't know what I'm talking about, travel more. Just, you don't have to travel internationally, even just get out of your town, go and experience a new place within your town, even somewhere out in nature. Just experience where different places and you'll find what I mean. When I was in the United States this past fall for a little bit after being gone for almost 2 years, the energy felt so heavy, it felt so dense, and I was just so tired. And I can't express why I felt it that way because unless you've experienced it, I'm not sure you would totally understand it, which is why I say travel more, experience the world more, and and tune into your body more and how you're feeling. And as you're traveling, you'll recognize that your body's going to start feeling different ways in different places. So things in Bali are really clear because the Balinese people are constantly in prayer and ceremony and ritual and keeping all the spirits away, not just from the island, but from like the entire world. They're doing like all of these prayers and rituals. There was one time this summer where it was just raining nonstop and it wasn't rainy season. Because there's only 2 seasons really in Bali. There's rainy season and not rainy season, and it was not supposed to be rainy season, right? And there was all this rain coming through, and my friend was like, why is it raining so much? There's all these ceremonies going on. I finally just asked, and what he found out was that the Balinese people were doing ceremonies to cleanse the entire world of like bad energy, essentially. So things happen so fast here, like so fast. Sometimes you'll be thinking of somebody and then immediately they like turn the corner and they're just there. It's like I cannot even begin to tell you how quickly things like that have happened here. So, and things are just moving fast. Things are moving faster and faster. All planets are out of retrogrades. There is no excuse. All of your behavior is yours officially now. So yeah, it's been really intense to be experiencing everything that I'm experiencing, and also profoundly beautiful. So many beautiful people I'm meeting, new ways of working, grinding in ways that I haven't grinded before. Like learning how to be more in balance, taking time for myself, noticing, okay, I'm really feeling tired. I really need to rest. I need to move. I went to ecstatic dance 4 times last week. That was about 8 to 9 hours of cardio dance. I just needed to move the energy. And I know how to do that now because I have all these tools, and I practice it because it's important to me. Once you have a baseline understanding that there's a new way to live that feels better, that feels more peaceful, that feels hopeful, that feels more complete to you, you'll do everything possible to avoid feeling what you thought was baseline before. And you'll start manifesting new ways of living and start practicing new ways of living and see, wow, what else is possible? And that's really what I wanted to chat about today is manifestation. Oof, what a buzzy word. Everywhere, everyone is just manifesting, babe. And it's beautiful, actually. I mean, I definitely practice manifestation. I believe in it. I believe in energy. I'm an energy worker, so obviously I'm believing in it. And what it comes down to is embodiment. For me, it's embodiment, it's neural reprogramming, it's abundance. And if you can find a way to do these things, and actually all of those things are basically the same thing, it's embodiment. It's learning how to realize and love and own and devote practice to being in this body and believing in your worth, believing in your goodness, believing in your magic, believing that magic is possible, and still believing that things are realistic. So that's one of the things I love about identifying as a mystic, is that there's all these paradoxes. And in the manifestation and spiritual worlds, you'll hear all of these paradoxes. Right? A paradox is like a big little shrimp, right? Or that's an oxymoron. Anyways, paradoxes seemingly don't make sense, but they actually do make sense. Big little shrimp is strangely kind of like a paradox, but it's also an oxymoron. Anyways, my English teacher is showing, can you tell? Paradoxes seemingly don't make sense, but they do. So, for instance, holding two truths that seem cognitively dissimilar at the same time and knowing that they both make sense. So, in manifestation, it's about believing that you're already there, that you've already received it, that you already are it, and being realistic about where you are at the same time. It's both. And when I say manifesting, it's like, what do you desire for yourself in your life? If you were to dream the biggest dream for yourself, what would it be? If you could dream bigger than that, what would it be? And why do you think it's not possible? And there's the gap. There's the shadow work. There's the inner child work. There's the lack mindset that desires to be looked at under a microscope and then actually drawn in closer, alchemized into something new and pristine, shifting the energy. I was talking to someone just yesterday actually about the word remembering. I spell it differently often now, like re-membering, like taking like maybe being dismembered and then remembering these dismembered pieces back onto our body. And at first he really liked it. And then he was like, that doesn't make sense because I want to get rid of all this stuff. And it's like, it's both. It's both. We release and take off the armor that we've built up over time, but we remember the parts of ourselves that we threw off in the process. that we forgot. And so manifestation is the remembrance that you are worthy, that you are whole as you are, that you remember to embody it. You shift your mindset in such a way, neural reprogramming. You reprogram your mindset to one of growth rather than being really fixed. This is how it is. This is the only way that it is. This is the only way to live. This is the only way I can be. This is just it. There's nothing more. Expand yourself, expand your mind. Growth mindset, elasticity, plasticity of the mind. And we can get into some of the different ways that we do this. Little ways, big ways, all of it. But manifestation is dreaming big. And then we find the gap. We use neuroplasticity, neural reprogramming, to get into a space of abundance mindset, which is ultimately worth and magnetism. Just that. These are really abstract concepts, so digest as you will. Re-listen to the podcast over and over. There's other resources you can tap into. You can obviously always reach out to me. This is what I work on with my clients: embodiment and deep release of inner child, like trauma. Then we should learn how to shift it. So yeah, let's talk about that a little bit more. Embodiment is the actual practice of being in integrity. Words and actions align. Words and actions align, because who you think you are you actually being that person? And then if you cannot embody it, meaning that you fully feel it in your body, it's not just like a display, an egoic display. Like you really believe it. Like you really believe it. Like you have to be even potentially borderline delusional for some of this when you're first starting, if you really don't believe some of the things. And you have to believe it's possible to shift it, even if you don't embody it yet. So for instance, the shame story that I always come back to for myself is I am not worthy. I am not desirable. I am not worthy. I'm not good enough, right? It's like, meow, meow. It's like just that. Every single story that I spiral into and I start feeling out of control and anxious and all the things, it can always be boiled down to one of those three things. I'm not good enough. I am not worthy. This is not it. So I hadn't shifted that yet when I first started all these manifestation processes. And it's like, I had to believe, I desired to believe that I was worthy. I knew I didn't know it. I knew I hadn't embodied it yet, but I knew I wanted it. And that's what matters, right? You have to believe it is at least possible, even if it feels like you have to climb Mount Everest and maybe like 10 Mount Everest to like get there. That's why there are things like affirmations where you just say it and then one day you'll believe it. And that can work. There's a part of that that's not, it's not untrue, but embodying it, doing the reprogramming work of shadow, of inner child, all the belief systems that we picked up in the first 7 years and then beyond of programming to build our baseline. Programming mean how our brains function. Things that we believe to be true that actually if we start questioning and we say, actually, is it true? Is it true that I'm a bad singer? Or did somebody just tell me once that I was a bad singer and I chose to believe them and I never sang again? And even if you aren't a great singer, who fucking cares? Why do you care? If it brings you joy, fucking sing, baby. Now, maybe be realistic that I don't know if anybody's going to pay you to sing. If that's like, you're like, I want to be a pop star, but I don't know how to sing. Actually, there's plenty of pop stars that don't know how to sing. So maybe your dreams can come true. Like, here's the thing, everything is possible, my loves. It's right. Like, everything actually is possible. And I have to, just so you know, I'm saying these things for me too, because it's a daily practice in remembering that I am worthy, that I am whole, that I am good enough, that all of it. It's not like it gets healed and it goes away forever. It's a constant practice and remembering. It just gets lighter, it gets slightly easier, it just becomes woven into the fabric of your life and being as you practice it more and more. When I first started working at the school, back in the day, probably about, I guess it was 7-ish years ago. Wow, 7 years ago? Wild. Anyways, when I was working at the school, I started learning about growth mindset and helping my students learn that the way that they spoke about themselves and the way that they thought could shift based on even just adding one little word at the end of a sentence. And that word is yet. It is a great word. Here's how you start reprogramming your brain to believe anything is possible. So, for instance, I would have students that would say, I'm bad at writing. I don't know how to do it yet. We add that little word at the end, and it goes from something fixed, a belief, a truth, an absolute. I'm not good at writing. I don't know how to do it. That's pretty, like, there's nowhere to go. There's nowhere to move from that. But yet means that there is that in the future, you can work at it and get better and learn how to do it. It doesn't mean you're going to be the best of the best of the best out of it, but like, what does that even mean? All right, what does that even mean? So we add that little word yet at the end of our sentences. We become aware of how we are speaking. Maybe we find ourselves using a lot of absolutes and a lot of fixed mindset language. And then we add that little word yet. We start adding it at the end of everything, everything, everything. I'm not good at cooking yet. And then do you practice it? Right? Do you actually want to do it? That's the other thing. There's only so much time in the day. What do you actually want to focus on? Like, one sentence that has pretty much stayed fixed mindset for me is, I'm not good at math yet. It's like I want to be better at math, and I put no time and effort into that because I have a calculator and I'm okay with it, and like, I can figure it out. I know enough to get by. I feel okay, right? So notice that as well. Like, what do you value? What are you putting your time into to actually grow? So starting to add that word, that one tiny word, is just a really beautiful, small but potent way to start changing how you think about things and start manifesting new realities, new beliefs, new patterns of thinking into existence. Another way to do it is through like guided meditation, through reflection. In yoga, we call it svadhyaya, and self-study. Meditation, the purpose of meditation is to learn how to harness the thoughts. It doesn't mean we control our thoughts, we harness them. Sometimes if you harness like an animal, it kind of gets away from you sometimes, and you got to bring it back in, right? But you've got it. You still got it, right? Sometimes it gets free and loose. You got to go wrangle it up again. Like, I've been doing a lot of wrangling of animals. I do know a cowboy, though, in real life, IRL. I had such a huge crush on him when I was a little kid. Cody Walter, if you ever listen to this, I had such a thing for you. Anyways, Cody. Anyways, so wild. Where was I? I got distracted by my by my crush long ago. You have to harness your mind, harness the thoughts. And if sitting alone with your thoughts for even 5 minutes sounds absolutely impossible, I challenge you to start getting into your body first. So yoga, the practice of yoga, the purpose of yoga is to make one of the purposes is to make the body so very tired and exhausted that sitting for meditation is possible. So make yourself physically exhausted somehow, and not because you're at work just drained because you're looking at a computer all day. I mean, literally do physical work. Go work out, go be in the garden, go dance wildly, go whatever it is, go do yoga. It doesn't matter. Work the physical body to a point of exhaustion. Obviously, listen to your body. Don't do anything unsafe, but move your body. Breathe intensely, work up a sweat, get red and clammy, go have sex, go do the things. Like, go be in your body. And then see what it's like to sit alone and just feel relaxed. And then sit with yourself. And then you start practicing observing your thoughts. And so the pretty typical example is that you want to imagine that your thoughts are like clouds just passing in the sky, and you notice them and then you just let them go. And you don't want to attach any stories to them. Like, you're like, oh, and then so and so at work did this and this and this. And then you start like spiraling into the story. And then you just go, oh, I noticed that I just started spiraling about work again. All right, I'm just going to notice that I did that and like let that go. And then do your best to just come back in. See what other thought comes in. Some days are going to be really easy to do that, and some days are going to be so hard. And just so you know, sometimes it's so hard for me. And I practice this, like I do this more or less daily. I have different ways that I meditate now because it evolves as I'm evolving. But sometimes it's really hard for me. And I have to just let myself spiral. And I notice letting myself spiral, and I make the choice to be okay with that. I am mentally out of control right now. And I make peace with it. And I'm like, you need to be out of control right now. I give you permission to be out of control with it for right now. For right now. Not for forever, but for right now. Be out of control with it. It's okay. So you just start practicing that. You observe your thoughts, and then you start questioning, is that true? Is what I believe true? Like, absolutely true. There are very few absolutes in this world. People say the only things that are absolutely true are death and taxes. And I'll tell you what, I am not even totally sure that either of those are definitely true. The only absolute is that change is inevitable, and that the earth doesn't need us to exist. In fact, the earth would do significantly better and thrive so much better without human beings as we are going about living these days. Drastic changes need to be made, but that's another podcast episode. Change is inevitable, and the earth does not need us to exist and to thrive. And once we realize that we are the earth, and we realize just being is enough, things shift for us there too. Taking a moment to interrupt this playful, spiritually enlightening episode to let you know that if what you're hearing is igniting and inspiring you to take action and to step more deeply into your own empowered, transformational journey, go to the link in the show notes below and set up a free 30-minute mentorship call with me so we can chat about how to support you with aligning to the path that feels most resonant to your soul. And if you're enjoying this episode so far, don't forget to subscribe and rate the podcast at the end to ensure that more beautiful conversations with badass beings around the world continue to transpire. Thank you so much again for listening. Let's dive back into the magic. But we have to practice. We have to practice Noticing what the thoughts we have even are before we can even question them. And once we start questioning them and saying, is that actually true? Is that actually true? Then we have to ask ourselves, where did I first start believing that? When did I first start believing that? And that's where inner child and shadow work come. Inner child work is related to healing those parts of ourselves, the little one within, the little one who didn't get what they needed when they were younger. Even if we had the most amazing, bestest parents in the entire world, they got all the A+ trophies, they're the bestest parents. Even then, it doesn't matter. There was probably a time when you didn't get what you needed. And if it wasn't your parents, maybe it was your grandparents. And if it wasn't your grandparents, maybe it was your cousin. And if it wasn't your cousin, maybe it was some kid at school or a teacher. It doesn't matter. It was you being young and vulnerable and not getting what you needed and not feeling safe. So we build up all this armor, we build up all these beliefs. And this happens, and this is actually shown in science and like neurobiology, that in the first 7 years, you're building basically the computer chip of your mind. And then you have a baseline of those first 7 years of life. And then pretty much for the rest of your life, you're trying to undo what happened in those first 7 years. And then once you realize that your brain is actually continuing to grow and to solidify into an adult brain till you're 25, then you realize that you're actually like in process for a long time. And now we're trying to undo all of that. So we have to ask ourselves, when did we start having that belief? Who told me that was true about myself, right? So going back to the example of I can't sing, who told me that I can't sing? Oh, I totally remember it was so-and-so, and it was 3rd grade, and we were on the playground, and she said it to me, and then I went home and I cried, right? By the way, this didn't happen to me, but it could have, totally. I had other things where things like this happened, right? And then we have to go, all right, what did I need in that moment to feel like that wasn't actually true? What could have shifted so I didn't choose to believe that as a little kid who just didn't know any better? How can I forgive myself? How can I forgive that person? And we do that through a number of different ways. We find ways to bring in the adult version of ourselves to maybe protect us. We find a way to reimagine how the scenario could have gone down if we had stood up for ourselves, right? We find a way to repattern the memory. And then there's usually some form of catharsis, some release, tears. And we go, oh, that's what I really needed. And we hold our little ones. We imagine literally our big grown-up selves holding our little ones and saying, I love you, it's okay. She said it because she was also a little girl and she didn't know. And then it's like, maybe you found out as an adult that she like was going through trauma. I guarantee she was going through some sort of trauma too, right? Whatever the scenario or story is, whatever the belief. And it's remembering, wow, can you forgive them? Can you forgive yourself for believing it for so long and bringing yourself so much suffering? That's inner child work. That's shadow work. How could you have been so mean to yourself for so many years and said so many unkind things to yourself about the hideous singing monster that you are? How can you like let that go? Draw that shadow in more closely and be like, wow, you're so afraid of being hurt and not liked for your singing voice because your ego is desperately trying to protect you from dying if you get kicked out of the community. Right? Because we're social creatures, human beings. Even if you say you don't like people and you like to be alone all the time, at the end of the day, humans are social and we need each other. And back in ye ancient old ways, and when we were more established in community, by the way, there is a movement towards community once more. and it's beautiful. And now that I've experienced it living in Bali, and like I've tapped into a whole global community of nomads and expats everywhere, I know what community feels like now. And I'm continuing to see it unfold and unfurl, and it's beautiful. It's profound. It's important. We need each other. The myth of the independent person is starting to crack and shatter. We're realizing how fucking important it is to have one another. Yes, you can do things alone. Great. And you just don't have to. Life isn't actually meant to be that way. It's not even possible to do just with another partner. It takes a village. And so back in the day, if you were kicked out of the community, you could not survive. You would have died. So you're going to do everything you possibly can to like protect yourself from feeling hurt, from feeling like you're going to die, that you're not going to survive this if you start singing again and somebody tells you what a terrible singer you are. We learn to out our shadow. We speak to it. I've done it on this podcast a number of times. I've done it in my writing a number of times. I can speak to my shadow pretty openly these days. I don't necessarily do it with everyone, but then again, it's public on podcast, on podcast, right? Like the reality is I can speak to it because I have made peace with it. I have cried many tears, epically over several years now, to let it go and just make peace with it. Yeah, this is a truth. This is what existed for me. I have worked through the sludge of that to find forgiveness and love for myself. That's shadow. It's saying, here are all the things I really didn't want anyone to know about me. You can know it because the reality is you cannot hurt me with this any more than I have already traumatized and hurt myself repeatedly. Self-flagellation is a real thing, even if it's not physical. Been deeply unkind to myself in a lot of ways, very, very mentally, very emotionally, right? So a lot of ways to inflict pain and suffering onto ourselves. We're pretty damn good at it. I've generally found from all the different people I've spoken to, we're like, if somebody is really harsh with you, I want you to times that by about 100, and that's probably how they speak to themselves. That doesn't mean we put up with unkind behavior, but I'll be really honest. If somebody is really deeply unkind to you, they are that unkind times 100 to themselves, whether they recognize that or not. It's like, wow, babe, I send you peace. I send you blessings. I hope you work through what you need to work through, because that is fucking intense. And I see you. I see your little one protecting yourself. And I love you. And I don't want you in my life, but I love you. You're good. You're worthy. Remember this. I hope you remember this. We plant the seeds, right? We can just say that in our mind. We don't need to say it out loud, but it's that. And some people's shadow speaks really loudly. It's not our job to tell people what their shadow is. Not our job, unless literally somebody wants to pay us, and I can do that too. I can do that too for people because I do that. Somebody wants to know, be like, here's what's going on. This is what I see. This is what's happening, right? And we do so lovingly. We do so tenderly and gently and kindly for ourselves and for one another. If we're getting paid for it, and it's literally our job. Otherwise, it's not our job. It's not our job to tell our partners what their shadow, like, it's not our job unless somebody asks. When I was first practicing shadow work, it felt so daunting. And one of the things I did is I asked a few people who I really trusted, who I knew loved me and I had been through some shit with. So they were like the real. They were my warrior tribe, people I trusted, and people who would be truthful enough with me. And I asked them, I said, what do you think my shadow is? Intense to receive some of those answers. but not wrong. I remember there was one friend, I asked him, I said, what do you think it is? And he told me, and I was like, whoa, it's really uncomfortable and really edgy to receive that. But I sat with it and I had to really look at myself and realize, oof, I do that. I do that. And then I work to unprogram it, ask myself, when did I start doing this? Noticing when it started, the behavior pattern would start to come up, right? Then we get back into neural reprogramming and repatterning. So inner child work and shadow work are huge, and I dare say it, perhaps the most important part of manifestation. You are not allowed to access the highest possible vibrancy and light unless you have spelunked into the cavernous depth of your shadow. And shadow is not bad. I want to be really clear. Shadow is not bad. Ego is not bad. It's just deeply wounded and uncomfortable to be there. It's our most wounded parts. It's the parts that are like the least desirable. It's the parts of ourselves we maybe hate. Hate is such a strong word, but we might hate parts of ourselves. And take it from someone who has been there and realized she hated herself. How can you practice things so you learn to like who you are? All this talk about self-love, I want you to like yourself. Can you stand to be in a room alone with your own company for 5 minutes? Do you like yourself enough for that? Because we might love someone and not like them. It's entirely possible for that to happen. Do you like yourself enough to make those shifts? You must experience depth. And the farther down you go, it's science, baby. You will go in the equal and opposite direction at some point. And you have to know that it will come. You won't necessarily know when it will come, but you will experience it. And we have other tools to support us in that process. Therapy. Get the support you need from professionals who are amazing at it. Work with energy healers. Work with mentors who have been there to support you, because it takes a whole village. You don't have to do it alone. My goddess, what are you spending money on? Stop spending money on all the fucking streaming platforms and put that towards therapy, energy healing, yoga classes, whatever it is, mentoring. What are you spending the money on? Stop drinking your problems away. See what it's like to get sober and put your money somewhere else. Just how can you reallocate to take care of yourself if you feel like you are deeply struggling? This is the truth. It's not that you don't have time, it's that you're just not making the time. It's not that you don't have money, it's that you're just not spending the money in the way that makes sense. And there's abundance mindset. Abundance versus lack mindset. Lack means you live in a space where there's not enough. It's never enough. You're not going to have enough money to live. You're not going to have enough money to eat. If you quit your job and you do, something, you take time off to take care of yourself, you'll lose your job, or you'll whatever it is. There's always a story. There's always an excuse. Lack says you must do this or you will not survive. Abundance says, I am worthy of receiving and attracting everything my heart desires and more. And I will, and I'm already there, even if I'm not there. Right? That's where the delusional piece comes in, because like manifestation, like coaches, especially like manifestation money coaches, they'll just tell you this. They'll be like, so first of all, reprogram your thought patterns on like why you're in lack mindset. Where does that come from? How can you start to shift all of that? And you have to kind of already believe that it's happened while also maintaining reality, right? So you can't be totally delusional and be spending at a level that's you're like, I already have $1 billion. And if you literally don't have $1 billion, you need to be aware of that and not be spending at that level, right? So we can't be totally delusional, but we can be a little delusional. It's that, yeah, I act like I have $1 billion, even if and I'm just going to buy a coffee every day. That is how I'm treating myself, because when I have $1 billion, it's not going to be a thing, right? We live in abundance. We live knowing that all will already be provided for us. All already is provided for us. Sitting in that grace and magnetism is vital for manifestation. If you do not believe you are worthy of attracting the life you desire, the money that you desire, the partner that you desire, you will not manifest. It will not come in. You will experience energetic blocks. If you are always consuming content from someone, and you're like, I just want what's free. I just want what's free. I just want the cheapest option. I just want what's free. Sit with that, because that full consumption without ever doing some sort of energetic exchange, even if it's only like, hey, I really love your content and all I can pay right now is this. Is that possible? Sometimes someone will tell you no, and sometimes somebody will tell you yes. Wow, thank you for that. I appreciate that you are able to still give in your capacity. Are you only consuming because you only want what is free? Because ultimately there's a lack there. Or are you finding ways of energetically exchanging? Maybe the energetic exchange is that you just like somebody's posts, or you leave a review because you don't have the financial capacity at this time, right? How are you giving back in ways that feel aligned for where you are now and can also support, right? It's not just about taking. That's a very wounded patriarchal mindset that we as human beings collectively have been living in, and that's why we are in the state of the world that we are. We are constantly taking from Mother Nature. And the world is being depleted of resources, of animals, of atmosphere, of all of the things. There's trash everywhere because we're just taking, and we're not giving back. We're not replenishing. How can you give back? Even if all you have left is $10 and you spent $7 of it on a coffee. I feel like $7 for a coffee is like average now. Wild. Those $3 extra, put them in the tip jar. Give it away to the people that worked hard to do it. How can we give back? That is abundance mindset. You start practicing it now in small ways. Again, you don't even have to do it with money. Energetically, everything is energy. How are you giving back? Are you responding to somebody's posts? Right? Like that is an energetic exchange. Are you giving them compliment? Wow, your information that you're giving me is changing my life. Thank you. Is shifting how I think. Thank you for doing this work. I'm so grateful for you. That is an energetic exchange still. People can't live off of those, right? So of course, money still is important, but like and so then eventually when you can give back financially, then you do that with the people who freaking show up for you and show you the new way, the new path, right? We sit with that. We support creation. We support. Thank you for supporting me. Wow. We thank our body for supporting us. We give back to our body for giving us so much. We're not just constantly taking and taking and taking and hating on it, right? It's all the same. The body is a representation, as a microcosm of the earth itself. We can't keep taking and hating on it and not paying attention to it. Eventually, it's gonna strike back in the form of the macrocosm of tsunamis and tornadoes and floods and all of these things, or the body is literally going to be like, wow, today you hurt your back and now you like really can't walk. You get in a car crash. You can't breathe because the cartilage between your lungs is inflamed. The last one is deeply personal. But these are all ways that you can start to shift and change your life. All of them are possible. You start with the low-hanging fruit, the little wins. And I spoke to that in my last podcast. How do you start to make changes, small incremental changes? This is the big stuff, though. This is why we do it. Because ultimately, we are worthy of living our wildest dreams. We are worthy of sharing our gifts. The world desires for you to share your gifts because you have gifts. You have something to share. You have something to say. And there's a lot of people online who don't think before they say something. They haven't taken the time to heal and to work through things before they start sharing. And you can tell because they're not embodied. And an embodied person hits different. You can tell they have done their work. You can tell that they live in deep integrity and alignment with what they think and what they say and what they do. And it doesn't mean they get it perfectly all the time. We don't put them on a pedestal either. We just say, wow, look at what this person is showing me is possible. I want that. Start filling your social media and your just media with examples of beauty and integrity. Turn off the violence, turn off the drama. Show yourself what is possible. Inspire yourself to be better. If you get triggered by something that I've said, if you get triggered by something that anybody has said or done, and you're like, oh gosh, and you start feeling jealousy, you start feeling anger, you start feeling hate, you self-hate, you start feeling any of these things, it's all a sign to say, what are they saying is triggering you? What is it? Why is it being triggered? Why is it coming up? It's food for thought. What belief do you sit with that has made it deeply uncomfortable for you to receive what they are sharing? It's not saying that they're right and you're wrong, because that might not necessarily be true. Sometimes people trigger the fuck out of me and I'm just like, yeah, you're just being an idiot. But I still think you're cool. Like, I don't want you, you're not for me, but cool. Right? But like, we need to practice, and like really intense feelings of jealousy, of self-loathing, of disgust, of whatever it is, deep judgment that usually springs from a deep-seated belief or neural pattern that you have chosen to believe is true, but actually very likely is holding you back. Set yourself free. Start questioning. Start practicing growth mindset. Add the word yet there. Be really kind to yourself. Get the support you need to do the inner child and shadow work. Love on yourself. Like on yourself. Inspire yourself to be the version of you, to embody the version of you that you know is possible. Because it's possible. Yeah, give back. Don't just consume, give back. Be of service. That's what really being of service is. More on that, though, another time, too. So, that feels pretty satiating. I think that we've gone through just enough today. Chew on that, my love. Take care. Do something nourishing and joyful for yourself. And see you next time on The Reluctant Priestess. Ciao. Thank you so much for tuning into this very Reluctant Priestesses podcast. Without you, I'm just talking to myself, and as much as I actually enjoy that these days, this is way more fun. If you liked this episode, please be sure to rate, subscribe, and leave a review. And take a moment to send this to someone who you think this episode might resonate with. Who knows? Maybe it's the bit of magic they didn't know they were looking for. Until next time, ciao.